Dear all, welcome to hrtech.in's demo hour, our first demo hour edition in 2022. In today's session, we will be showcasing how we can leverage technology for people analytics and how HR teams can make strategic decisions using people data. Before we move to the session, a quick overview of hrtech.in. hrtech.in hosts India's largest and curated marketplace of pure play, best-in-class HR tech solution providers, over 40 plus HR tech providers across 8 categories. We're also co-creators of the India HR tech market map, which is supported by SHRM. We embarked on the demo hour event series in 2019 to evangelize and promote use of HR technologies. The event actually provides a great platform for tech providers to showcase their high-tech solutions, which helps in acceleration of the adoption of HR tech. The event motto has always been to showcase demos and not presentations. The first event actually happened way back in 2019, September, at our WeWork facility in Suntec, Singapore. And then after the onset of the pandemic, we have moved to an on-demand webinar format. We have done demo or events focused on specific topics such as mental wellness technology, technology for managing non-PMETs. PMET is a Singaporean terminology for blue-collared workers. Then technology, how technology can be leveraged for diversity, equity, inclusivity, belonging, then how to enhance your total candidate experience, so on and so forth. In a 2018 survey by David Green through My HR Future, they identified people analytics and digital HR as the two most important skills that HR professionals need to develop to prepare for the future. In fact, we had a masterclass last month anchored by Dr. Fermin Diaz to help HR teams in becoming analytical in 8 steps. So it is very, very clear that HR professionals must be fluent in analytics if the function is to be effective in improving individual performance, enhancing employee experience, and to most importantly, achieve business goals. Today, technology can help HR teams in becoming analytical and derive valuable insights from people data. To showcase how technology solution providers that have been focusing on people analytics segment today have providers who will be showcasing demonstrations with applications across the entire employee lifecycle space. So we have Togy from Orglens, we have Chinmay and Jonu from PiSquare, we have Jay and Joey from Pulsifi. We are also equally excited to share that we have representatives from the HR community who would also be asking questions to the providers during the Q&A session. Thank you once again for participating in the demo hour edition. I hand it over to Togy for his presentation. Over to you, Togy.
So thanks, Sriram, for setting the context. And just to give a quick introduction about what Orglens does. Orglens is in the organizational network analytics space. And to put it very simply, our mission is to reveal the real networks in organizations. And the objective here is, at this point in time, organizations spend a lot of energy developing the human capital within the organizations. Now, this could involve either developing the skills of the employees or developing how they deploy those skills in the organization, or how to enable the overall abilities that employees bring to the table. The key point over here is all these developmental activities are focused on an individual. That's the individual capability. But at the end of the day, how valuable the individual is to the organization is decided by where she is placed in the network, right? Because the placement in the network can have a significant impact on how the employee is able to add benefit, right? And that's where social capital comes in. So what Orglens wants to do is to be able to enhance the social capital of the organization by giving leaders a sense of what their current network looks like, calling out who are the key individuals from an influence perspective, and what the overall network is structured, and how effective is it towards innovation, collaboration, etc. And when that is done well, a combination of that human capital and a well-structured social capital really takes knowledge capital to the next level, because it creates that competitive advantage, right? And how Orglens does that is by using a combination of both social psychology and network science experience that's there currently in the organization. So in our startup, we have a good mix of skills of people who have a social psychology background, at the same time people who have a data science background, who are able to use the specific skill sets around network science to give those detailed drill downs that can help enable the social capital view of the organization, right? So that's a very quick summary of at a high level what Orglens intends to achieve. Like Sriram said, let me focus more on the demo itself. So at this point, I'll switch over to the actual demo of the platform, so you'll get a sense of how it adds value. So this is the actual product itself. The few key areas that we focus on in terms of providing these insights are around engagement, inclusion, collaboration, and advocacy. So let me take this time to just quickly walk you through how Orglens can help you reveal the real networks in your organization, and then use that information to drive engagement, inclusion, advocacy, and then collaboration, right? So let's start with engagement. Now, this is a term that's used a lot, and this is of high importance irrespective of the kind of organization that you're in or the kind of profile that you have. And the reason for that is engagement is one of the critical parameters organizations have to assess how truly plugged in employees are to the larger ecosystem. What is the level of alignment with the culture or the employee value propositions? And more importantly, a lack of engagement is also a proxy for the chances of someone leaving the organization. So keeping that in mind, what we do is we use network analytics to give insights around engagement. Now, before I get into the specifics of how the insights themselves are generated, how the platform generates these insights is through a bunch of different data sources, right? So one data source is we administer a survey to the organization, which will ask a bunch of 8 questions. And the questions are fairly simple. It would be something to the extent of, in the last 6 months, who have you reached out to for mentorship, right? Or in the last 6 months, who have you reached out to for subject matter expertise? So when you respond to that question as an employee, you give the name of some 7 or 8 people who have helped you in that space, right? And based on that data, we create a social graph of the organization and create these insights, right? And those are the insights that I'm going to be presenting to you. So the key point over here is that the starting point of the analysis is a social graph that's rendered and that is representative of your organization, right? So with that background, let me start off with the engagement use case. Now, in the context of engagement and how social graph mapping helps, now, one of the constructs that network science helps with is by looking at a network, you're able to identify which are the disconnected employees in the organization. And when I say disconnected, there can be 2 types. One is we may have a group of individuals who are completely disconnected from the rest of the organization, right? If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see that as marked as disconnected nodes. The other slightly extreme, lesser extreme case is a group of folks who form a small world of their own, right? They are forming silos of 5 or 6 people where they interact with just themselves and not with the larger cluster. So the benefit of using network science is we are able to quantify what is the extent of behavior where you're seeing individual disconnected nodes, or as we call them, isolates, or groups of silos. And when you see a lot more of these silos or disconnected nodes, what you get is a less engaged organization or a less engaged network, right? And if you look at the image on the top right-hand corner, that will give you that sense, right? Whereas ideally speaking, for having a really well-engaged organization or a well-engaged network, the network that you would expect to see is something that you see on the top right-hand corner, where you don't see isolates or silos, right? So with that context, let me show you what the platform actually gives you. So this is a representative data of a survey that we've done earlier, where fortunately in this case, the number of people with 0 connections or isolates was 1, which is very less, and that's a really good sign for the organization. And even better news, number of people with who were in silos was 0, which is great news, right? So the summary of what this data says right now is the level of disengaged behavior is very limited, right? So that was a positive sign that went out to the organization when the survey was done. The other perspective that network science helps with is it gives you a sense of what kind of engagement is being experienced at an individual level, right? So there's a metric called incoming connections that the platform generates using graph analytics. Essentially what it does is it looks at individual employees and measures what are the number of incoming connections. So conceptually speaking, what that means is if I have an incoming connection of 10, that means 10 times someone has reached out to me, either for mentorship or expertise or some other kind of support, right? So while that is a good sign, what that also means is that if the number of times someone has reached out to me exceeds a certain level, we are reaching the point of collaboration overload, right? And that's where data points like this become useful, especially in the post-COVID era, or rather the COVID era, where there is a lot expected from people who are constantly on Zoom calls, and leaders might want to keep a close watch on who is getting burned out. And data points like this can give you a sense of who is experiencing collaboration overload in a very quantifiable manner, right? And depending on the kind of data that's provided while we do the survey, we can give this information either at the organizational level or by department or by location. We can tell you what's the collaboration overload being experienced by individuals, right? So that's the engagement angle. So to summarize, what the platform enables through social graphs and through network analytics is, one, to give you a sense of what is the level of engagement people are feeling. Because if you see that the average level of incoming connections is high, there's a good level of engagement, right? But the other side is it also gives you a sense of what is a disengagement that is there in the organization by quantifying the number of disconnected people, right? So that's the engagement element. Let me quickly switch over to the inclusion module that the platform has, right? And inclusion is a term that any HR practitioner would be very well aware of and be very passionate about, right? And in a lot of contexts, inclusion is usually associated with gender. But here, what we've tried to do is to bring a lot more use cases or a lot more applications. So here, using social graphs, what Orglens does is to give you a view of inclusion, not just from the perspective of women or men and women, but also from the perspective of hierarchy, which is how inclusive is the organization for non-leaders, right? We also look at the perspective of tenure, right? We see how inclusive the organization is for people who have very recently joined the organization, right? Now, the reason why we were particular about creating these three views is when it comes to gender inclusion, it's pretty much a no-brainer, right? It's an important application. But when it comes to, for example, new hires versus tenure associates inclusion level, it addresses some very specific applications, like, for example, new hire integration, right? A lot of organizations are very clear that they want to ensure that somebody who joins the organization doesn't feel lost in the initial few months. And they want to ensure that, one, they get integrated very quickly culturally. At the same time, they also get integrated very quickly in terms of becoming productive, right? So in an IT organization, that would be average time to build an employee, right? They expect that to stay low, right? In any other context, it would be the time taken by an individual to become active in from the perspective of communication that happens on mail or on social platforms. Now, the advantage of using network analytics is we are able to quantify what's the level of inclusivity being experienced by new hires. And the way we do that is, firstly, we set the context, right? We look at what is the current split of new hire to tenured folks. So if you look at the top row, we are looking at this point in time, a total data set of 214 people, right? And we are saying that overall, there is a distribution of 4% new hires and 96% tenured folks. That's a demographic distribution. Then we look at the communication pattern, right? So here we see that 90% of the new joinees have reached out to tenured folks, which is understandable, right? Because they want help settling in, they want help with some specific clarification or for some transactional data. But the point here is a tool contextualizes that 90% with the ground truth, which is 96% of the organization is tenured people, right? Whereas new joinees are reaching out to tenured people only 90% of the time, right? So there's a 6% variation. So in the context of the current demographic distribution, we are able to say that there is an environment where new hires are not comfortable with or enabled to reach out to tenured folks, right? And that's actionable for HR to step in and use a combination of offline and online measures to make that, create that environment where new joinees can reach out to tenured folks, right? The other way of looking at it is, how do tenured folks reach out to new joiners? So in this case, if you look at the communication pattern, 2% of the times tenured folks have reached out to new joiners, right? Whereas if you look at the demographic distribution, new joiners account for 4% of the population. So there, the difference is lesser, and therefore the organization seems to be doing something right in terms of encouraging tenured folks to reach out to new joiners. And in terms of making them check, how they are settling in, etc. Right? So these are the nuances that network analytics can offer in terms of enabling inclusivity, right? So the use case I just covered right now is for new hire integration. The same logic applies to enabling integration of women into the workforce a lot faster. It applies to enabling non-leaders to get integrated into the workforce as soon as possible. Right, so that's the inclusivity angle. Now, so this is a unique value proposition of the organization where of the tool, where we're actually rendering the platform as a social graph, right? And you're able to see very quickly just through visual cues, right? Who are the influencers in the organization? Because the nodes which are the largest are influencers, and you're also able to use the colors to identify between men and women. Leaders versus non-leaders, as well as tenured versus new hired individuals, right? This, of course, is for the entire organization. It looks like a bit of a hairball. You have the option of drilling down to a specific location or a department, and you'll be able to see the data a lot more clearly, right? And very quickly speaking, the last module that I want to focus on is advocacy, right? And here, what we do is we do an NPS survey, but we take it to the next level and we use a framework called Orglens NPS or ONPS, where in addition to asking a question like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you advocate your organization? We convert that data into a higher level data by merging that with the social graph. So we are able to tell you to what extent are your promoters also central to the organization. So when we do that, we're able to tell you if the people who are promoting the organization, are they in a position to create other promoters by being central to the organization, right? So that's where the ONPS module kicks in. And there we take the NPS framework, which is very commonly used, and help you understand if your organization is structured to create an atmosphere of advocacy by giving enough visibility to the promoters of the organization, and at the same time ensuring that people who are not promoters are not causing damage by being central to the organization or possibly spreading a negative vibe, right? So that's the advocacy module. So these are the key modules that Orglens has to offer. The important thing is, to reiterate, the data set we look at is to create a social graph of the organization first, and from there we create all these insights around engagement, inclusion, collaboration, and advocacy, right? So that's a quick summary of what Orglens has to offer. So with that, I'll probably stop my demo and I can take questions.
Thank you, Togy. ONPS is definitely an interesting concept, and thank you for highlighting that ONA can be leveraged not just from a collaboration perspective, but how its application across the DE/IB space, which is gaining a lot of traction globally, how it can be leveraged by HR teams. I paused that to check if Chiyu or Joycelyn have any queries for questions for Togy.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Ram. Thanks so much for the demo. I think it's really interesting to see how this was integrated with the social networks. And I don't think I've seen something like that so far in terms of analytics. I'm just curious in terms of how the tool is executed. So I think you said that questions are sent to employees. So in what form does it come? Are they pushed on a weekly basis or a monthly basis? How is that data being collected from the employees?
Right. So this would be a survey. How frequently the organization wants to do a survey is up to them. But to your first question, the format of the survey is a simple set of 8 questions, right? The first 7 questions are thematic in nature, where we cover themes like expertise, energy, mentorship, etc. And the question would be, for example, if it is an expertise related question, the question will be, in the last 6 months, who have you reached out to for expert advice, right? If it is related to energy, the question will be, in the last 6 months, who have you reached out to feel energized, right? So the response to the question is a list of names that employee reaches out to for that context, right? So you have 7 themes that are covered. The 8th question is the advocacy question, right? Where the individual is asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, please highlight to what extent would you advocate your organization as a place of work or a service provider, right? So that's a rating, right? The remaining 7 names, you're giving the list of names that you reach out to and how frequently you reach out to them, right? So the second part of your question on how frequently we do it, it is advisable that we do it at least once in a quarter, so that you're able to get some sort of a running view on how the network has evolved over a period of time. But the other perspective is, if you're going through some organizational change, let's say you're going through a merger and acquisition, right? You may want to do the survey before and after, right? So when you do it before, you're able to identify the key players from both the organizations, and you can work with them specifically instead of working with everybody, because that will save your effort, right? Because influencers might be 10 in an organization of 1,000. So you work with them throughout the integration process. And at the end of the integration, you do the survey again to see if these 10 people have helped you in the integration, right? So that's one way of doing it. A major enhancement that we are coming up with soon is the ability to integrate directly with the email platforms or the social platforms to use conversational data to create these graphs instead of using surveys, right? Because surveys after a certain extent can lead to survey fatigue. But if you look at emails or chat data, you can generate social graphs every day, right? So you get a lot more fidelity in the insights. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. And yeah, I definitely do think that the challenge with surveys is really the take-up rate and having employees to log into the platform to complete the surveys. So I think pushing that new technology would be good. The other question that I did have was related to the leadership inclusion portion. I'm just wondering, in that data analysis, is it possible to also drill down to, say, looking at specific teams or businesses? So where I'm coming from is, if we were to use this data to analyze sort of a particular group of leaders within a business to see what is their inclusion like,
Yes.
and the interaction between the employees in their team, is
right.
that able to present the data?
Yeah, you can do that. If you look at the filters on the left-hand side where my cursor is, right now I've shown this filter to show the data by the entire organization.
Okay.
But if I want to zoom into a view of by business unit or by location, then the entire screen gets refreshed. So if you have 3 locations, you will get the data for each location, and you can zoom in not just into this data, but also to the specific social graph for that location or that department. So you have that zoom in option available. Was that what you were asking?
Thanks. And then the filters? Yes,
Yeah.
That was what I was asking. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure. Was there a follow-up question? Sorry, I interrupted.
No. Yeah, I was just wondering whether the filters could be co-used. So for example, like a business and a zone.
No, at this point in time, it's a single filter option that we have. So because as you can imagine, the computational load is significantly higher. And more importantly, and this is a very interesting question because we keep getting it all the time, right? But once you start using the platform and you're able to do a BU wise or location wise drill down at an organizational level, that in itself throws a whole bunch of inputs, right? And in most of the cases, that answers 90% of the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chiyu. Thank you, Togy.
Okay,
In fact,
thank you so much.
the biggest use case for ONA is being leveraged by the L&D team, as you rightly mentioned. The pre-leadership development training and post-leadership development training doing the ONA has resulted in providing a great use case for L&D, which always struggled on providing a ROI on training. So thank you once again for highlighting that, Togy. We now hand it over to Chinmay from PiSquare for his presentation and demonstration.
Hi, everyone. I hope I'm loud and clear. We are basically a machine learning and an artificial intelligence firm. Today, we are going to demonstrate PiTalent, which is our talent platform. And, this platform has had solutions which our clients are used to answer, specific questions or simulate what if scenarios or get alerts on, kind of key thresholds. So the kind of areas that we have been deliberating and solving for our clients have been in the talent attrition space, whether there is an impact on delivery and CSAT, whether you have longer recruitment cycles and you're not unsure, you're unsure what makes successful leaders, cost impact, or around offer rejection, which leads to, of course, increased cost to hire. And more importantly, scattered HR info. We found in most of the companies that we have been working with, there is no big picture view and there is difficulty to access talent strategy and progress. So, we came up with this platform which addresses 7 life cycles, the ones which you see here, right from diversity and inclusion through down to learning and development. Performance, attrition, and recruitment forming the core, where there are a lot of predictive elements which help companies, decide the future, and so on and so forth. And finally, these are some a quick view of who we have been serving with, large companies like which I need not name, like Dell, Siemens, and Capita, but we have others like Inference and Unibic and Mahindra Finance, where they have been using our platform to get insights into their talent side. And that will help me stop my share now, and we'll move quickly into the demo, which Chinmay will take you forward through.
Now, one of the challenges, or rather, I would say, one of the aspects that we had been facing before, and in fact, a little before we started PiSquare itself was, and specifically with teams in an organization and talent teams in particular, was that there are multiple applications and systems that are used for different functionalities in an employee life cycle. There is an application which is used for recruitment. There is an application which is used to track performance. There is another application which is used for managing the compensation and benefit. There are surveys which are getting rolled out. There is L&D. And an ability to consolidate this was a massive effort by the teams to create a picture which is coherent, which is giving insights into where the strategy or where the execution of the strategy is headed. HR teams, like most teams, would always look forward to knowing about an event before it happens, but it didn't stop there. They also wanted to know what happens. So let's say if they knew that an individual is going to leave, they were very keen to know that, okay, I know he's going to leave, that's predicted, that's great based on the historical data, but I also want to know what happens if we change his compensation by 15%, or if we change the span of the team in which he works, or giving additional flexibility and mentorship. Would that increase the employee lifetime value for us, right? So it's just not about predicting, but also trying to simulate and see what would be the potential impact of actions. And that's where PiTalent as a platform is what we arrived for a solution. Access-based control, typically hosted within the firewalls of organization. You have different users configured with roles through which they can access the different screens. I have logged in as an admin so that I have access to all of them, but then that's a capability that is already available to look at it. There are screens which look at an overall view with trends to show over last few months, or you could custom it and say that, okay, I want to see over the last quarter, last year, last week, depending on the need of the information. And then there are specific sections which you could drill down and have a more detailed view or look of it. You could, for example, you could go into more details of, at every tire, what kind of, in this case, I have selected a filter of woman count. I could go into ethnicities, disabilities, age group, depending on how and what would I like to see. I would have the reflection of that coming out here. Similarly, integrated with multiple platforms from a recruitment perspective, it pulls in data. It tries to visualize the picture of the state of recruitment today. You have recruitment across teams where all people have joined. What's the state of recruitment in terms of the overall process? How, which part of the recruitment process is consuming the highest amount of time or has the highest amount of backlog? You could drill into more details of it also if the need may be in terms of identifying source. Now, many of these graphical elements are obviously configurable given the measurement system in HR that is there in the organization. And this helps us provide the first level of insights or information in terms of what has been happening in the organization. And this is across the different frameworks that is there. Now, given this information that comes in, we've also built layer of predictability, and the ability to simulate on those outcomes. From a recruitment perspective, one of the predictability elements that I can show you here is identifying, for example, who is going to join us in which area branch. If I identify a certain individual, then the candidates under them based on the recruitment, what is the probability of accepting the offer and joining it? I mean, this is something a pretty large problem in the Indian context where, everybody has multiple offers and they usually tend to inform at a very late moment. And that's a very high impact because it just restarts your entire life cycle of recruitment from the beginning. Not only from the probability of acceptance, but you could also go into detail and see that, okay, what happens if we change a few elements? Does it impact my ability to get him to join us more? Is that what historical data has been telling? And can we do these small experiments to refine or increase our throughput levels also? Similarly, like a recruitment, you have attrition. You could drill down into more details. You could see attrition by different experience bands, hiring channels, age group, rewards, training, identify again attrition which have happened in different areas and zones, as well as identify a very high level attrition rate for different employee groups as well. You could go into more details to take the historical data and predict who are the employees at a risk of loss of capability. You could mix and match and identify that are people with the highest ratings are more likely to leave or not, and that could help you form clusters or cohorts of employees where you could take consolidated actions per se. It also gives you what are the factors which are affecting positively or negatively. Some of them may be under control, some of them may not be. Again, a refinement, tuning of that is an ongoing process that you could take it up. And these are powered by a lot of machine learning models in the background, which keep on getting retrained or keep on learning new features, new segments of data cross sections that come in. Like I showed you in recruitment here, again, you could do a what if scenario. You could identify for every individual, what are the factors affecting it? What are the details about that individual? What is his probability of attrition in the graph above? And how much time would he stay longer? As in not only identifying the propensity to move out, but when is he going to move out? A kind of a survival analysis to identify how long is he going to survive more. And if I change any of these factors, is he going to survive longer, or who is going to move out much sooner than, or have no impact of my actions. In fact, you could see the models that are there in the background. You could actually see their performance in a real-time basis, identifying or getting triggers or alerts when each of your thresholds set in terms of accuracy, or at an individual feature level. If you have any of these parameters breached, whether it is recall, precision, or any of these parameters, you could always identify and say that, hey, you know what, this is the time for us to just refresh the learning data, because the models are dipping, and that could be because of actions you have initiated. You started a new learning program, or you started a new masterclass for a certain set of high-risk employees, or you took action by providing one-on-one mentorship. Any of those actions that changes your process, or changes the impact of the status quo, changes the status quo basically. And that's exactly what your models will start showing, the difference between the historical information and the new process that has come in, and that's relearning trigger for you. Along with you, similarly, there is a performance part of it. Again, it's an overall view of performance. You could have the entire performance hierarchy represented as a grid. We used a 9-box model, which pretty much summarizes the entire performance strategy per se. You could have more detailed views of performance by, again, different cross sections or dimensions that can want to be seen. And you would have predictability here in terms of the performers, A performers, B performers, C performers, and what features affect them, how individual features are changing the performance parameter over time. And you could also do a analysis to improve performance. Right? So typically, as I said, a platform, PiTalent as a platform, integrates with multiple sources of data, pulls in that information, creates a 360-degree view of the employee. And at every event in the life cycle of an individual, it tries to identify what parameter, or identify what parameters are inhibiting or are encouraging, whether it is performance, whether it is lifetime value, whether it is an ability to join, and also trying to say what how has this performance been over a period of time. We have the compensation view also in terms of equity. How is the equity happening? In fact, in this module, we also match the compensation with some level of industry data that is available, and try to give you a comparative picture in terms of where you are over the equity in terms of a certain skill level compensation view, and you could again do more comparisons as you want to see by performance. How is the compensation view by role? What level of equity are we talking about? What level of dissonance is there in the system from a parity perspective? The ratio by different levels of grades and performance. You could have a complete consolidated view of information in front of you. And then there is, of course, the engagement level views, which is all the surveys coming together, a very quick view at a team level. Where are people most satisfied? Where are people not? Across different questions and areas, based on the comments, what are the positive, negative? You could drill down into each individual questions and have a view of what is the rating. You could drill down even more into details and look at polarity of the responses that's coming out, and a complete end-to-end view on the engagement perspective. And of course, the whole L&D. Again, the idea has been to create that consolidated one single place of information where you are able to come in as HR professionals. The time is spent on looking at trends, looking at the execution rates, seeing the results and taking actions, looking at the predictive results, using that as a negotiating or a pre-warning or a forewarning system, and identifying strategies, rather than spending time collecting a lot of information from disparate sources. Many times it's pretty difficult to do matching of this information to see how the performance has been of, or attrition among high performers. Doing all of this takes a lot of time. It spends a lot of unnecessary energy, and that's what the idea has been to reduce. Integrated with analytics, it has given us extremely flexible platform by which you could drill down. You'll have a complete view of cross section, and also integrate not only the predictive part of it, but also, as I saw, the what if, or the prescriptive part of it, to decide what strategy and actions can be taken up. So that was a quick view of what the PiTalent platform is about. I'm open to questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Chinmay. You walked us through not just how PiTalent provides the current analytics aspects, but how it can help the HR teams and predictive and as well as the prescriptive aspects, which I think are definitely very valuable, and how you can really support right from D&I, recruitment, attrition, performance to L&D, basically end-to-end aspects, the 9-box grid, the word cloud, the cohort charts that you showed, definitely very interesting. Thank you again for that. We also have Amy who's joined us. Just wanted to check to you, Joycelyn and Amy, any questions or queries that you would like to post to Chinmay?
Yeah, Sriram, hi, this is Ju again. I really like how this one really is integrated and everything's consolidated on one platform. I think the part that I'm curious about is where does the data come from and how is it put? Is it integrated to, example, HRIS, and is that how the data is coming in? Just trying to get a little bit more comprehension on the operation side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so from a data ingestion perspective, we have two options available. One, we have live integrations with most of the common HRIS tools, and also if it's homegrown, we have integrations with Workday, we have integrations with PeopleSoft, we have integrations with the SAP platforms that are there, Talio. So many of these common platforms, and a few of the other ones like Zing HR and others that we have here. So we built the integrations with them. That's where the live data fetch or continuous data fetch happens. We also realize that there will be many pieces of information which are collected in Excel sheets and are not necessarily part of tools. So you also have a capability of uploading a CSV depending on the function of the data part. Of course, preloaded templates which you could upload and have it, the data into the central database. So both the options, live integrations across multiple platforms, as well as an upload through a Excel sheet or a CSV, that's possible.
Thanks, Chinmay. And then the follow-up question I had was on the machine learning part. Is that original data set based on the data that your organization has collected, or would that also be generated based on whatever, say for example, if a company buys this platform, that data also continues to contribute to the machine learning trend?
The data from the organization is what is used, because what happens is these frameworks or these algorithms typically pick up the patterns basis the data. Now, if I use data, even if we call it similar organization, but the environment of the organization, the ecosystem of the organization, and culture of the organization are different. So it would not really work in every organization, right? So these models, the way the algorithms are set up, will have to learn, pick up the patterns basis and that specific organization's data set. Right? And that's where the flexibility comes in. That's where the relevance of the insights come in, because that's based on the data that is available. The challenge, of course, could be that at the beginning, we do not have a lot of information. Because of historical reasons, we may not have been capturing it, or we have not been there. But that's also a point to understand that this is where we have to start, and what is it that we will need to collect as we go ahead. Some of these models, of course, will work on smaller data set. Obviously, the risk or the accuracy parameters would be moderated. But as I always say, we have to start somewhere to reach the peak, right? And it gives us a good push to start. Can we do a transfer learning to take let's say an attrition model of another organization similar to yours and put it? Yes, we can. But then again, you have the risk of, the trade-off here is I take a smaller data set of my organization and maybe a little less features or parameters, factors, and have a model with lower accuracy, but I can compensate with the knowledge in the organization versus insights which, are not based on my data. So how much do I trust them? That's the trade-off that we'll have to do. And that's what we do usually in the initial discussions to say that, okay, this is what it is, and where is it that you would want. We also intervene there with our team of data scientists to caution organizations, telling that, I don't feel this is really working, or even if you want to use somebody else's, let us monitor it for some time before you actually start trusting it blindly. Right. So, you'll have to mold it a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you. Before you sign off, Chinmay, one final question that I had is, we have a lot of other talent analytics providers in the marketplace. How is PiTalent differentiated from them? Quick 1 or 2 points that you think which helps you stand out.
Right. See, the first thing is, of course, this is within firewalls of an organization. We are not hosting it, on our cloud systems, right? Second, I have not seen this breadth across, completing the entire life cycle of an the human capital space, unless and until it is a completely different use case. From a breadth perspective, this almost covers the entire breadth from that perspective, and integrating the predictive part of it and the prescriptive part with the trends of history. It's something which I've seen very rarely, right, across, and that's what we believe is the value that we carry on. And of course, there are flexibilities that are available for organization to take one module or a cross module, but we always believe that whenever we go in, that central data store that will be created as a consequence here, that's something that's invisible. But understand that for me to create all this, I'm creating a rich, clean data store in the organization, right, where everything is available not only for usage today, but also in future. Right, you are no more reliant on individual separate applications, and you also are free to change them, because we will connect and we will keep pulling data into that central place. That becomes very powerful for organization for any strategic talent needs or analytics needs tomorrow they want to do it. That's really marrying the strategy part and the data-driven execution part of it, or even data-driven strategy part of it. Right, because today the real challenge with people is, if one of us as a human capital leader or talent leader wants to sit and say, hey, you know what, I want to see a trend across my employees or across my functions, it's a big ask. It's a big ask. And I've seen this across organizations of multiple scales and levels. It's a big ask, because you are talking about completely different systems, all have to be finally consolidated in an Excel view, somebody creating a very large presentation, right, where it's not real time, it's not updated. I mean, you know all the challenges on there. So that's what we believe, we come in, to help organizations with.
Thank you, Chinmay. We now move to the final presenter for the edition. We have Jay from Pulsifi. Pulsifi is a well-known brand in the people analytics space. In fact, that their people data platform is quite well-known in both Asia Pacific and other regions too. So we have Jay, the CEO and founder of Pulsifi, with us. Over to you, Jay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jay. I'm the co-founder of Pulsifi, and what we provide is a people data platform. Our mission is to help you find great hires and make them leaders. So let me share more. So essentially what we do very simply is to help HR be personalized at scale. And that means in this whole space of people analytics, you guys have pointed out there are many solutions. I think what's really different about us, you can say, is that we really focus on person analytics rather than just people analytics, going down really deep into each individual. And this starts off by collecting and unifying data on each person. So from directly collecting it from candidates, from employees, or from the organization, and integration of existing HR systems. So information like resumes, like psychometric profiles, whether it is our assessments or assessments of third parties, video interviews, performance and ratings, employee records, and any other data. And I think, as pointed out before, this is important because data tends to be all over the place for most companies, whether it is different systems, some in the inbox, some manual. So really putting them together already, provide a single view of each person in real time is value. But also when you do that, you combine that with various kinds of predictive models, we can really understand each person very holistically. So beyond just using AI and natural language processing to analyze resumes and figure out competencies and experience, we can also look at abilities of people, personality, interests, culture, their work styles, and how all of that would actually predict performance and potential. And ultimately, when you put it together, all the hard skills, all the soft fits, how do we predict job fit? How do we predict organization fit? And we've done that really well. And from there, you can actually use it to improve a lot of decisions, all the way from hiring and selection to identifying and managing high potential employees, and also individualizing development plans. So these are some of the benefits that our customers enjoy. So firstly, for example, over 90% accuracy in predicting behaviors, performance potential, job fit, culture fit, and these are all validated by manager ratings. It could be 12 months after the person has started working. So safe to say it's almost like getting hiring right all the time, or selecting high potential employees, for example. Second one is about saving time and effort, all the way from administration to screening to doing less interviews. Third one is about great user and satisfaction, candidate satisfaction from thousands of candidates. And last bit is really about improving adverse impact ratios, reducing bias, and of course, helping to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. So here are some of our customers across different sectors, and we support them in multiple countries all over the world. So without further ado, I'd like to dive more into the platform. So let's get to that. Let's start with talent acquisition. So over here, we are looking at the talent marketing specialist position, and there are 5 candidates. In some cases, there could be thousands of candidates. So what I want to bring to your attention is the fact that for each candidate over here, we have a single number for role fit and a single number for organizational fit. And this fit score really comprises multiple aspects that we take into consideration across hard skills, soft fits, and everything. And that's a part that's usually done manually. So having models to do that for you is not only faster, but potentially better, right? So let me dive into one. So the first thing we present to the user is to really tell the story about this candidate. It's not about showing you the resume, but rather explaining to you this person is getting 6.6 out of 10 as in terms of predicted role fit, out of, let's say, the candidate average of 5.4. And why 6.6 is because of this breakdown on the right, comprising everything from competencies and experience to work styles or values and so on. The order of these things on the right would be related to the priority. And of course, that would be different for different jobs. And the yellow bars would represent how strong the candidate is in that aspect, which again is different for different candidates. So really at a snapshot, you get to see why this is the case. The person is getting 3.6. Another view of that really is the person getting 7.0 out of 10 for an outfit kind of a perspective. And customers of ours have used any kind of models for this. It can be related to culture, can be related to values, can be related to competency frameworks. Right, so again, this is a pretty quick one to really look at everything to have a single score. The resume is still a click away. Video interviews, they pop up very conveniently over on the right. And then for the rest of the profile, there's a lot more detail that the user can get to if they want to. So for example, for outfit, you can dive more to see insights in terms of each of these aspects that are important to your organization. We can go back to also look at work styles of this person, how, for example, initiative and leadership are predicted out of these people, this person. And like I mentioned, all these are all validated using models that our customers provide, our customers and users provide feedback on. Also, what a person values at a workplace, whether it's working conditions, achievements, things like that, or what are the kind of work types the person is most interested in, whether it's investigative work or work related to social impact. We look at cognitive abilities and also competencies. So over here, really analyzing job titles, work experience, years of experience in the resumes and matching it to the job requirements. We can basically match what kind of competencies you're looking for versus what the candidate has. And any manner of screening questions are related to help with processing candidates. So I think one big question you might have is, okay, what goes behind these scoring mechanisms? So there are a few big pillars for that. Number one is we use a lot of job databases, and we have 50,000 of the most common jobs profile in our database, which are the tasks and responsibilities out of each job, and what are the hard skills and soft traits that are attributed for people to be able to succeed in those. So that's one pillar. We also work closely with customers who want to have more bespoke models to say that, for example, a marketing specialist in my company is very different from somewhere else in the same industry, so they can actually help to tailor that. Lastly, we can also use employee benchmarks. So for example, if the customer has a whole bunch of people who are already in this role, we can actually analyze their profiles, identify what really differentiates the exceptional employees from the average ones, and use that to influence the model as well, right? So from here, to help the user get more of this, to really better understand the candidate, we also recommend how an interview can be done, right? So for example, for a marketing specialist role, initiative is important, but the candidate is only average in it. So we recommend these are some questions you should ask, and these are some things to watch out for. And we encourage users to leave ratings and comments, right? So other collaborators, other panel interviewers can see it, and then from there it becomes easier to reach a decision. Of course, there are other features to share profile, manage pipeline, and so on. Wanted to also quickly show you what's happening on the talent management side. So essentially, we can run the same models on not just candidates, but also on employees. And that could be a high potential program, leadership development program, or maybe just a program to focus on the sales and customer facing roles, where you want people to excel in certain competencies that are very important. So we can really run people against those models, right? We can also see how they distribute by score, by various kinds of departments, things like that. And then we can also put them on a 9-box if you layer on performance, and then you can figure out, for example, who are the people you want to spend more time on. And from here, they're all the employees you can dive into. So for example, for one of these people, we can start seeing, okay, what are strengths, what are development areas. And from here, we can actually provide the customer content in terms of what are some ways to get the development plan started, whether it's a mix of on-the-job training or behaviors to model, or even online resources, which we have a library of content for. Right, so maybe that's really what I want to show you in a nutshell. A lot more, of course, but I think given the few minutes I have, this is what I wanted to show you. And I'd love to know what you think and any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Jay. The fact that talent acquisitions team really struggle on identifying the right fit talent, and Pulsify helping them with not just the role fit, but org fit based on assessing their work style, work interest, their cognitive abilities, the competencies, and not just that, but also helping them in the talent management side with, in their hypo and L&D aspects through your platform is definitely a great value add, not just for the talent acquisition team, for the HR teams too. Thank you once again for the demonstration. Just want to check with. Thank you. Just want to check with you, Joycelyn, Amy, any questions that you would like to ask Jay? Okay, so Jay, quick check, right? Are there any interesting trends that you are noticing in the people analytics space, especially when it comes to talent acquisition, that you would want to highlight, and why, because of which you think Pulsify will definitely be a great value add to the team in 2022 and beyond?
Oh, well, I think we can't run away from this great resignation that's floating around. I got to mention that. But I think it's not really just a story of people quitting. It's also a lot of story of people switching roles and potentially doing the boomerang, going out and coming back. I think it just goes to reflect that the concept of whether people find themselves fitting their roles, fitting their organization has changed. So I think many organizations and many of our customers also are finding it daunting, but actually it is a chance for a reset to do things right the second time around. So I think in the past, a lot of talent acquisition, talent management has been very guided by process, but I think the new spirit of it is how do we be more guided by people? And it's about really looking to understand people for what they are and how the organization can provide a path for them to feel appreciated, motivated, and continue to grow. And I think that's really in line with what we're doing at Pulsify in terms of seeking to understand each person in depth, because we believe that once you do, everything that you do, whether it's hiring or learning, teaming, engagement, wellness, they will all follow from there. So I think that's really how we believe that what we bring to help organizations will be something very valuable for the longer term.
Yeah, people over process, definitely. And especially I like the concept that you're trying to look at every candidate as every person holistically rather than bunching them together and looking them as a data point. There are other providers too who are catering in similar space as yours, right? How differentiated is Pulsifi from those, right? What is your USP?
Yeah, I think the USP here is not just looking at different data points about each person, but really seeking to help the user distill everything to make recommendations and decisions. So common thing is, for example, if you have a great candidate in front of you, there's a resume, there's psychometric profiles, video interviews, there's other kinds of things going on. How do you help the user decide where is the balance, where is the trade-off? And there could be 5 such great candidates, 10 such great candidates, or even more. So that's where we believe that helping to condense everything into a single number would be really useful, especially when you have large volumes. And that number helps to provide not just consistency across teams, across geographies, but also being more data-driven and evidence-based, right? So that it can help to reduce bias, improve explainability. I think that's the part that we do differently from a lot of providers out there, because we really seek to help to bring the decision right to the user. And then from there, it's for them to make decisions using the insights that we provide, rather than needing to juggle data to come out with their own.
So we just heard Jay saying that the great employee resignation is real and how Pulsifi is there to help the TA teams. Thank you once again, Jay, and the Pulsifi team. Thank you again, Chinmay, Jonu from PiTalent, and thank you, Togy from Orglens. Really appreciate your time and effort in showcasing your products. It's definitely important for HR teams to become analytical in 2022 and beyond. And your products definitely provide them the great support that is required in this journey. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sriram. Thanks, everyone. All the best.
Thank you very much.